everyone. Welcome on the Barricades. This is another edition of our show. My name is Boyan Stanislavski, and with me is the usual co-host of the show, Dr. Maria Cernat. Welcome.
Hi.
Right. So, great to have you here, and great to be here with you. So, before we start discussing Romania and Bulgaria, which are the topics, some events that happened in those countries recently are going to be the topic of this particular segment. I just want to remind everyone that we're all available on YouTube, we're available on Odyssey, we're available on Rumble, and the audio versions of our podcast can be listened to on Spotify and SoundCloud. Both versions, videos and audios, are available on our Substack platform, so go to thebarricade.substack.com and you will find the full archive of all our videos and all our audios, as well as our articles. And you can, of course, go always check out our website, which is thebarricade.online, where you will again find the entire archive. So having said that, let's move on and let's dive straight in. So Maria, what's been up in Romania recently, and what's been on your radar?
Well, I want to tell you that for the first time I was able to read an article regarding the Ukraine offensive where I could see a neutral tone, and the professor Radu Karp writing that article was very neutral and just informing about the military operations. And I'm so sad that it took hundreds of thousands of lives, Ukrainians and Russians, dead people, wounded people, to see the Romanian mainstream press coming to its senses and discussing war in a very rational and down-to-earth manner. No emotional upheaval, no bad versus evil, just explaining the facts. And I think that they reached this point of, rationality due to the fact that the counteroffensive is going very bad. And now they are trying to explain why is it going so bad, and why is it that the Ukrainians were not able to reach not even the first line of defense. And they were trying to explain things that already a lot of military experts explained before the counteroffensive even started, that the Russians have very, very sophisticated equipment allowing them to mine the field, and that the Ukrainians, even if they advance, they are a very easy target for the Russian artillery, and the fact that the Ukrainians are outnumbered, and all the things that were so obvious, even for us, Boyan, even for me, that haven't spent like 1 minute, reading about war, military, strategy, and all the
Well, you
rest.
taught at some kind of was it university
Yes,
or
the
college or
secret
something? You taught like
department
international
propaganda.
security. So
Yes,
so
I
I
thought, and I discussed with those people propaganda, and I was able to see how undemocratic their organizational culture was, of the people working in the security apparatus in Romania, and how the 30 years of democracy haven't left really a mark on the mentality and organizational culture of these people. But apart from that, I was not preoccupied. But it was so obvious right from the beginning that this is a failure, and that the Ukrainians unfortunately haven't stood a chance. And I don't know why we Romanians and other people, especially the ones intellectuals, academics, and mostly politicians from the western part of the world, the global north, had to send so many young people to be slaughtered, because it was so obvious that they were going to fail. And of course, there is this debate in Romanian mainstream press that if we send more weapons, maybe we will see better results on the Ukrainian side. But of course, things are starting, finally, things are starting to look like, even for the most fanatical supporters of Ukraine and the government in Kiev, even for those people, things start to look a little grim. and they start to have doubts, which I think it's important. But I want to stress that it's unfortunate that so many people had to die in order to understand what should have been so obvious right from the beginning. And another thing is that apparently the coalition between the Social Democrats and the National Liberals that are currently ruling Romania, in a coalition that very much resembled what you told me about Bulgaria, where you had GERB, the party of Borisov, and then you had We Continue the Change in the same kind of coalition. We have the socialists and the liberals together, which sounds very weird, ideological, and from all points of view. But when you have people that are so incompetent, so opportunistic, so willing to do what they're told, from external and internal power centers, then it doesn't look so bizarre, because they haven't got a mind of their own. They are just there to follow different orders, and to do whatever is necessary to stay in power. And now there seems to be a bit of a problem, because next year we will have elections, and the Social Democrats and the National Liberals sign an agreement that the liberals agreed to raising taxes and basically collecting more money. And the Social Democrats apparently agreed to budgetary cuts, because, of course, we have a huge deficit, and they have no money, basically. So they came up with this solution. We raised taxes. Okay, the National Liberals agreed to this solution that apparently goes against their ideas, and then the Social Democrats said yes, but we are going to cut budgetary, funds. And there is a whole debate that the Social Democrats just renamed some of the functions in the administrative apparatus, that they haven't cut the budgetary, expenses. And there is this debate now, and it looks like these people can stand each other. So I keep wondering if in 50 years we will discover, and we will know for sure. I don't know, I hope to still be here for the day when we will see what got these people to stay together in this coalition. We will have it, because I can suspect that there is a higher power. There are other interests, internal or external, I don't know, that keep these people together, because otherwise I think they would be at each other's throats. So I hope to see the day when we will see what kept these people in this coalition in Romania and Bulgaria, when we will have it written down. But Romania, I told you, is not very interesting, because the security apparatus managed to get in power people that are very obedient. And I told you that in almost 30 years, everybody seems to be so tired, seems to be so demoralized. People are not interested in politics anymore. We have less than 40%, around 30% of people that have the right to vote actually exercise this power. So Romania is in a state of depression, I would call it, depression, and this is it. But in Bulgaria, I see that, because you explained many times on this program that the anti-Russian sentiment is not so widespread and unanimous, almost unanimous, like is the case of Romania. So you have a little bit of division, you have a little bit of life, so to speak. Not everything is frozen, like I would say.
Right. Well, I guess equaling division with life is probably not the kind of happiest of all arrangements that you can have. I mean, I would probably I'd like to see the Bulgarian and the Romanian and the Polish and other Eastern European societies functioning as a coherent entity, trying to develop according to the capacities, possibilities, and resources they have. But fact of the matter is that right now there's a lot of there are many divisions, and there's a lot of polarization. And in each and every of the societies throughout Eastern Europe, I think it manifests itself in different ways. And unfortunately, the more primitive the politicians, the political classes are, the more primitive the political discourse, if you like, is. it kind of is reflected in the way the political sentiment displays itself in the public sphere. So, as you said, in Romania, it's like a weird conglomeration between two parties which normally are supposed to hate each other, and ideologically and in any other aspect, really, but they are together, and they kind of balance in the society despite the final outcome or per saldo it being negative for everyone, with the exception, of course, of the ruling class. But this is the way things are, and we can speculate who is the higher power, but of course the first instance that comes to mind is the American embassy, because they operate the same way all across the world, basically. So they coerced somehow the two rivaling parties, again, that should hate each other in Bulgaria. So why wouldn't they be able to do that in Romania or anywhere else? So in Bulgaria, one of the manifestations of the political sentiments, which are by Western standards, I guess, pro-Russian, that's how one would describe them. That's how one would describe them. They are centered around certain symbols. I've said it many times on this program and many other programs that I do not really think that there is any kind of profound understanding of how the Russian leadership perceives itself and perceives Russia among the Bulgarian Russophiles or pro-Russian crowd, or the public opinion which supports Russia or keeps fingers crossed for Russia in this conflict. They don't quite understand anything really about Russian politics, about the Russian political culture, or about the architecture of the internal political process in Russia. They only have something which is deeply embedded in their hearts and minds, which has been, transmitted from generation to generation, that, one of the metropolis for us Bulgarians is Moscow, which is our, Orthodox brothers and sisters, our Slavic brothers and sisters, our liberators, and so on and so forth. Also, what is important here to add is that many Bulgarians, especially we're talking about the generation, my generation, and older generations, which is people 40 plus and older, they also have a kind of understanding of what had happened in Bulgaria over the period of the 50 years of so-called communism. And most people have very warm feelings about that period, which also strengthens the kind of pro-Russian, although I don't think it's really an accurate description, but a kind of pro-Russian sentiment, let's say, right, in the society. And, because there is lack of understanding, and because there is no actual discussion about Russia, about international politics, about international relations, about, the United States, if you like, imperialism, anything really, then the average person that is interested to whatever extent in politics in Bulgaria, they will resort to symbolic gestures. And those symbolic gestures and symbolic elements in the public sphere have been in the center somehow of what is referred to as political debate in Bulgaria. Now, how can you have a serious political debate about a monument, for example? Well, if it were a monument, I don't know, that was about to be erected, then okay, you can have a discussion about whether it makes sense, whether we really appreciate this or that figure or this or that event that it's supposed to commemorate. But we're talking about the monument here of the Soviet army. And this is a huge monument, like in, across all capital cities, and not only capital cities, like across major urban or all major urban centers across the region of Eastern Europe, you have those monuments. And, every time there is a serious problem in Bulgaria, a serious political, economic problem, whatever, then you get some kind of clown going out there and saying, we have to dismantle the monument of the Russian or Soviet army, right? And then everyone focuses immediately on that. The emotions throughout the entire society, they are being reasoned to, levels which you normally don't see. When people discuss about any other political issue or historical issue or anything like that, right? So immediately people get hyped up. There are all kinds of organizations, some of which are very quiet normally, but the organization of Bulgarian Russophiles or whatever, I mean, this is just these are just organizations. I mean, they don't really do anything in terms of like everyday activity. They are just there in order to put people together who have like similar views. And this is only one such organization. There are veterans, there are, you know, ex-members of the army, there are this and that, there are, you know, youth organizations of various, you know, to various parties like the Socialist Party or this nationalistic party, Revival, right? And, you know, and even the members of those parties, they would immediately, you know, gather somewhere in the center of Sofia, discuss how are they going to defend the monument of the army, and then someone else would kind of organize other gatherings about how are we going to break the defenses and how are we finally going to tear down this communist brand, you know, this kind of nonsense. And fact of the matter is, it can be very entertaining at times, and I think there, if we're
because
yeah.
there are people camping around the monument trying to defend it.
Yeah, I know, but I don't really think that anyone is going to attack it, really, because if you dare to do that, then you really risk a major social conflict in Bulgaria, a major social conflict, because people are not very political in Bulgaria. They've never been, by the way, but you know, this at this point, we've got the similar situation in Bulgaria as in Romania. Like 30% of people eligible to vote actually vote. No one really gives a damn. Everybody's super demoralized with everything that has happened over the last 30 years. It's like there's no hope. There's very little kind of there's very little imperative really in anyone individually or in terms of like social groups to actually go and vote and take any kind of political action. But you know, the last thing that people have is the kind of political sentiment that divides them. But it's a very shallow division. I mean, the division is between some people in Sofia and some people in Plovdiv, maybe, which is another big city in Bulgaria, who are very pro-Western oriented, who want to see Bulgaria thriving as once France did, or Spain, or I don't know, Germany, or something like that. And they want to see Bulgaria kind of the Bulgarian political and social and cultural architecture being modeled on those examples from the West. And it's a very tiny group of people. I mean, we're talking about maybe 5, maybe 10% of the entire public opinion of those people who are eligible to take any kind of political action. Of course, this 5, 10, okay, maybe 15, I don't know, but that's maximum really. Percent, they are very well funded. They have like many institutions and NGOs behind them, and they are very well, maybe not very well organized, but at least very well funded. And if needed, they will organize themselves in all kinds of, in all kinds of initiatives. It doesn't necessarily have to be only demonstrations. It could also be something like, let's say, social committee for removing the remnants of dictatorial communist past or something. Of course, it's going to be focused against the Red Army monument or something similar that is going to enrage the other part, which is the other 85, 90 or 95%. And of course, if you in these circumstances that I just described, if you actually dare to do something like that, you really risk a major social conflict in Bulgaria with all kinds of violence displayed, kind of surfacing in not only around the monument of the Red Army, but all across really all across the country in small towns and bigger urban centers. Now that would happen only because people would probably feel, and that's not far from the truth, really. They would feel that the last thing that they have, that they somehow appreciate, that they treat with respect, the last thing that they can think of in any kind of noble terms, that the Red Army liberated us from fascism, that the Russian army before that liberated us from the Ottoman Empire, that this is the last thing that they somehow have, and this is being symbolically taken away from them. I think they're going to react, and there's at least a high probability that they would. And this is why I think that it's unlikely that anyone would actually try to physically remove the monument of the Red Army, unless I'm getting it wrong. Perhaps the society in Bulgaria is already demoralized to the extent that they wouldn't just give a damn. Sorry. So we'll see how things are going to go, but it's not really a discussion. It's not really any kind of political debate about our past, about the socialist or the People's Republic legacy. It's not really a discussion about the role of Russia or the Soviet Union in our history. It's just an attempt to see how far can we go with certain things and to what extent have we weakened down the kind of social, I don't know, spirit, if you like, and the potential for reaction against that. And I think this is it. I mean, there's nothing really substantial to it that you could extract something from and say like, oh, these are whatever the new conclusions about like the history, the recent history of Bulgaria. You know, so that's how I see the situation there.
So, listen, last note on this segment of our show. What is the sentiment and the general discussion with regards to the war in Ukraine? Because I saw at some point President Radev saying that we are going to support Ukraine, but not to the extent that we destroy basically and we jeopardize our national security in the sense that, okay, we give them what we can, we support the refugees, but when it comes to giving away weaponry and military equipment that would jeopardize our national security, then that's no go.
Well, look, first of all, let's start with the question of national security in Bulgaria. I think it's a very, national security, or some talk about national strategy. And it's an interesting topic, but I'm not sure to what extent it actually, in theory even, applies to Bulgaria. Because in order to have a national security strategy or national strategy about security or whatever, then you got to answer yourself, you got to ask yourself the question, what actually is a nation and how are we going to define its interests? And thus, how are we going to define its security? Now, if we take the most, and I don't think anyone has really dedicated any time discussing it seriously over the last 30 years in Bulgaria. So I don't really think that there are any concrete and specific items that, or that there is a specific set of items that would form something like a strategy for national security. And if we take the kind of basic indicators of what national security is, how national security as a notion is perceived, like, the army, the police, the security apparatus, the secret police, the border police, all of those things, if we take it into account and try to somehow draw a balance on the basis of the quantity, at least, because we don't know anything about the quality, and I'm afraid it's very bad, but the quantity of the Bulgarian soldiers, the border guards, the policemen, the secret police officers, and all the rest of it, I think we don't really have any national security. And quite honestly, I think it would be better if we haven't had those institutions, because when we have them, we kind of live in this delusion that there actually are some institutions or people that are going to protect us in a situation of danger. Well, that's not true. So it's actually better, practically speaking, not to have them, because then you know that you're on your own. Whereas otherwise you're just deluding yourself that someone can come to your help. Nothing of that is ever going to happen. And God forbid anything happens in Bulgaria that endangers the national security, inverted commas, whatever it means, however everyone perceives that. I don't believe anyone is capable of defending anything in Bulgaria. And of course, President Radev, I mean, look, our army in Bulgaria consists of, some say 25,000 soldiers, some say 15,000 soldiers, some even say 12,000. We don't even know exactly. I wonder whether anyone in the Ministry of Defense actually knows. Now, we know that there still are that there still is some weaponry that could be handed over to Ukraine. Now, fact of the matter is that NATO, and there are statistics for that, I can bring them up next time, for example. I'm not prepared, I mean, I don't have the figures right here in front of me, but the fact of the matter is that after joining NATO, the Bulgarian army has been disarmed completely and reduced to this idiotic number of like 10, 20, maybe 20,000 people. Just for comparison, in the late 70s and beginning of the 80s, when General Dobry Jurov was the head of the Bulgarian People's Army, the Bulgarian army consisted of about 300,000 people that were able to be mobilized immediately. I think 150 or 200,000 were constantly on guard, and then apart from that, we of course had like all kinds of advantages in terms of of weaponry, for example. The Bulgarian People's Army had more tanks than the Turkish and the Greek army put together at the time. Now we're really in a situation where we don't really have any kind of army, but we still have some weaponry, despite the fact that that the process of disarmament of the Bulgarian army, not only reduction in terms of catership, has been going on since Bulgaria joined NATO, which is 2003 or 2004. And now despite that process, we still have something left, and they want this to be transferred to Ukraine. That is NATO, the American embassy, and so on and so forth. And of course, any sane person, and General Radev, who is the president of Bulgaria, is a sane person. And despite the fact that he supports NATO, supports the West, he's a NATO general basically, he still has not gone into insanity like many NATO officials and American officials have done. So, he will defend whatever we have just in case, because maybe, just maybe, there will be some intelligent people who are going to react to some kind of endangerment of what is referred to as national interest, national security, and so on and so forth. So he wants to at least have some equipment to protect Sofia, to protect Plovdiv, Varna, and Burgas, and he wants to have some equipment to protect the nuclear power plant that we have in the north of Bulgaria, which is, by the way, very close to the Romanian border. So you should be also interested. I mean, your army and your state apparatus should also be interested in securing that facility so that no one blows it up. And, of course, President Radev said that we are going to support you because this is, well, what was he supposed to say? I mean, if he had behind him, like Orban, for example, has his, party and everyone, supporting him so he can basically conduct some kind of independent international policy. Well, President Radev is alone. He doesn't have anyone backing him. He is alone in this mud of pro-American bacteria that is running Bulgaria right now, and this is very difficult position. So what was he supposed to say? I mean, he cannot go openly against everyone. And Zelensky is being sent to Bulgaria. Not every once in a while. He actually went there only once. I think it was 2 months ago, if I remember correctly. And even Zelensky, who just went there as a guest, even he was attacking General Radev, right? The president, the host of his visit. So he really finds himself in a very difficult situation, but I find it very courageous on his part, despite the fact that I have disagreements with him, like politically on many levels, that I think he's actually trying to be a decent politician and a decent, statesman. He's trying to say, okay, we're going to support you. These are our obligations according to all the treaties that we've signed with NATO, with the European Union, with the West in general. That's true. But we are not going to basically hand over everything that we have and thus lose our country completely. And we've been on the verge of losing our country completely for the last, 20 years or something like that. So I think that General Radev is the only person right now with some kind of power trying to defend, with a position with power trying to defend, the remnants of the disappearing Bulgarian statehood. And then, of course, we have the other factor, which is the nationalistic party called Revival. And they are a very strange animal. It's kind of, I don't want to start discussing them right now, but I think that if another round of elections is organized relatively, fairly soon, like within the next couple of months, maybe at the beginning of the next year, then I think they have the chance of becoming the second largest party in the Bulgarian parliament. And this is why the current government, which is not a Bulgarian government, it's an American government appointed entirely by the American embassy. I mean, 14 out of 20 ministers have obvious direct links with the American state and its institutions. So it's actually rushing to do everything that they can in order to, incur so much devastation on this, again, for lack of a better word, pro-Russian sentiment in the Bulgarian society, the visual displays of the history of friendship between Russia and Bulgaria, like in the form of the Soviet Army Monument and many other monuments across, and parks and other places like that across the whole country. And they also want to make sure that everything we have is immediately transferred to Ukraine right now. So, they're rushing to do all those things because they know that, they will never be elected again to the parliament, because obviously, or if they are elected, they will never rule, because those two parties, as I told many times on our programs, are supposed to hate each other, and now they are in bed, and they are actually, in one coalition, despite the fact that they reject calling it coalition, but it is, in fact, a coalition. So, they've betrayed everything and everyone, except for the American ambassador, which I'm sure facilitated or coerced them to form this coalition. And now he's pushing he's pushing that all those things are immediately, pushed through the parliament, and even if the government falls apart in about 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time, 3 months' time, or whatever, then all those things are going to be already in motion. And when the revival party steps in, being the second, for example, I mean, this is how I predict it could happen, that it, being the second largest force in the, or maybe the first, force in the parliament, even if they try to actually put a halt to all those processes, it will be impossible or almost impossible. So this is the the actual game that's happening right now in Bulgaria. So this is a very dangerous situation, I think, and I have no idea how it's going to end. I'm always fearing for the worst when it comes to Bulgaria because of the kind of lack of activity on the part of the large masses of the society. Now, I will try to get our regular Bulgarian guests, Artur Artinyan and Buzhin Traikov, to come on our show and discuss that next week. I've been in touch with them, but they were unable to join us this weekend, but hopefully next week. So we're going to get a clearer and more detailed picture of how things actually are.
Definitely, because there is not this almost unanimous anti-Russian sentiment. Romania is very predictable because there are people that want sovereignty, but at the same time they are anti-Russian. There is a very small minority that I told you projects on Vladimir Putin the kind of manhood they aspire to. They imagine, and they transformed into this Rambo character that, solves the problems with force, determination, and all the rest. Is pure fantasy.
Well, I think there's a lot of determination on his part, so I think that.
But they transform him into some sort of Hollywood character. Sense, So they have very weird projections, and I told you they like him for all the wrong reasons, not for his determination.
Right.
But apart from that, in Romania, almost 90% of the population is anti-Russian, and this is why we don't have really a debate. Because everybody agrees. And I told you, it took such a long time to see a balanced, rational account of the war in Ukraine in the mainstream press in Romania. But that being said, thank you so much for your insight. I hope the viewers find it interesting also. And dear viewers, if you like what you saw, please consider supporting us. You can find us at patreon.com/thebarricade. You can find us, all the links are in the description. So we have a small community of donors. Thank you so much for your support. And we will discuss Poland because Poland is even more interesting than Bulgaria in the next segment of our show. Thanks.
Thank you.